A Massachusetts grandmother is accused of trying to kill her husband with poisoned soup, all to win the affection of a soap opera star that turned out to be fake. Roxanne Doucette faces several charges, including attempted murder, assault, and resisting arrest, for allegedly poisoning her husband, a man she's been married to for more than 4 decades. The investigation began to unfold on December 3rd when officers were dispatched to a local medical center in Ayer, Massachusetts. Authorities say they were called after Roxanne's daughter became suspicious her mother had poisoned her father after he was hospitalized. Roxanne's daughter told police her mother had been messaging someone she believed to be a soap opera actor and one of the stars of The Bold and Beautiful, Thorsten Kaye, and that the supposed soap star scammed her into giving them thousands of dollars. Once Roxanne's daughter went through the messaging on her phone from the catfishing scammer, she found incriminating messages pointing the finger at her mother as the person who purposely poisoned her father. Court documents go on to spell out a timeline and more sinister details. On December 1st, one of the messages sent from the supposed soap star said, "You have to get rid of your husband, honey. I need you so much." Roxanne responded she needed to do some more thinking. Shortly after 2:30 that afternoon, Roxanne wrote back, quote, "Making an amazing soup. Special potion. He will be hungry when he gets back. Just enough for him." About 2 hours later at 4:26 p.m., Roxanne wrote, "Hubby got back, not feeling well. Maybe I can collect life insurance." The supposed Thorsten Kaye then responded, "Honey, when will that be?" And Roxanne replied, "Don't know." Less than an hour later, Roxanne dials 911. Police say the report was for a 73-year-old man who was found unresponsive but breathing with a cardiac history. Roxanne told emergency responders her husband was feeling very dizzy earlier. He was mumbling but not making sense, then later rushed to a hospital. Once Roxanne's husband finally regained consciousness, he told their daughter Roxanne made him a soup that didn't taste very good and stated it was bitter.
The statement that he made to his daughter about it tasting bitter, the soup, is also a concern. And there's a great quote in Genetics of Taste and Smell, Poisons and Pleasures. The first line is, "Eating is dangerous." And everything we put into our body, we make a calculation about how it tastes, and our body is our defense. And so when something tastes bitter, it's really an evolution of our taste system that has prompted us to consider not eating things that are bitter because they could be poison. And 2/3 of the things that taste bitter could be toxic to us. So we as humans want to avoid that. So if something tastes bitter, we have to judge it if we're going to continue to eat it. So the fact that he said something tasted bitter gives a little bit of soft evidence to the poison theory.
Dr. Mary Jumbelik is a forensic pathologist and former chief medical examiner. She tells me circumstances around the case are troubling.
Well, like everyone else, it's a very upsetting scenario to think that a marriage of over 40 years can be disturbed by some digital shenanigans. Just in and of itself, that's disturbing. But as a forensic scientist, I would want to know more. So if I were investigating this as the medical examiner with my forensic knowledge and experience, I would want to know the past medical history of the patient. I would want to know the medications that the patient's on, or what else is available in the house. So what medications the wife is on. And then we would probably count them and see are the right amounts present or are some missing. That being said, there are a few groups of poisons that act really quickly, and cyanide and all its natural cyanogenic plants are in that category. Usually they do affect respiration, though, so it's a little unusual that his respirations weren't affected, but he was unconscious.
A limited toxicology report only testing for opioids, cocaine, and alcohol came back negative, making it unclear at this time what was used in the soup that made Paul fall ill.
We don't really know what's in the soup, and poisons can take very wide spectrum of presentation. It could be something you need to administer chronically over a long period of time for it to build up to a toxic level. It could be something that a lot of it will kill you, a little bit might make you sick, a medium amount, you're not sure. Some poisons act really quickly, others take 6 to 24 hours to even have any effect at all. And so the fact that she made soup, there may be something in it, he gets sick quickly. That's why I was talking about the cyanogenic plants because those do act quickly. Now, the other thing is a lot of poisons will cause GI distress, and I don't hear anything mentioned in his history about that. Like he vomited, or he had diarrhea, or his stomach hurt initially, or anything like that. So that's another thing that doesn't quite go with any other type of poisons where you might experience GI distress. Now, if you're talking medications, well, there's thousands upon thousands. So if you give a high enough concentration of a medication to someone who isn't supposed to have it, or it could have an untoward effect, then really it could be almost any, chemical that you're talking about. So knowing what was at the house or what she had access to would be really the most important thing to rule it in or out.
Court documents go on to reveal Paul was unaware of the possible poisoning, and after speaking with Roxanne's daughter, police decided Roxanne should not be allowed in the hospital room with her husband, and they were looking to have her banned from there. Police say they planned to speak with Roxanne, and that's when things took another bizarre turn. Roxanne asked police if they saw the messages and spoke with her daughter. Roxanne seemingly tried to explain herself. According to police, she told Paul she was going on a retreat, then later came clean about not going on a retreat and told Paul about the person she was messaging. Roxanne said she thought she was talking to a star and always wanted to meet a star. She then shared more, saying her husband has erectile dysfunction and other health issues. She said she was afraid of being alone and denied that she would ever harm her husband because she loves him very much. She said she had been scammed out of $8,000, but police noted Roxanne seemed to put a lot of thought in what she was saying. During Roxanne's talk with police, she was allegedly always looking off to her left and never at the officer asking her questions. According to her criminal complaint, police say her statements went from their health to their sex life to the fact Roxanne is writing a book and that her thoughts seem to be all over the place. When police tried to take Roxanne's phone as evidence, she refused. Officers then explained that they were going to have her phone seized. Roxanne reportedly stated to police they were done and she planned to go back to her husband. But since police were investigating the crime as attempted murder, she was not going to be let back into Paul's hospital room. After continuous refusal to hand over her phone, officers then informed her she would be arrested. Police say the 64-year-old resisted by pulling her arms in and squatting to the ground. She ended up on her back and then began assaulting the officer, kicking him with her boot, even kicking him in the crotch. Officers say they were able to get Roxanne cuffed and her phone was eventually seized. She was arrested, charged, and now is under a court order to stay away from her husband. Then another twist. On December 12th, more than a week after Paul was hospitalized, Roxanne was booked for violating the court order to stay away from her husband. Police say they received another call from Roxanne's daughter that her father had received a letter from her mother despite the active restraining order. When Roxanne's daughter turned the handwritten letter over to police, it reportedly stated, "Please consider dropping the restraining order. That's a long time to have you out of my life. I want my husband back. I miss you so much." That letter she sent now has her facing an additional charge of violating a protective order. Roxanne has denied poisoning her husband of 45 years and told local news station CBS Boston it was all one big misunderstanding. She told local reporters she would never try to kill anyone and that the soup was simply old, not poisonous. She reportedly said the person pretending to be Thorsten Kaye said they loved her and wanted her to leave her husband, which she had no intentions on doing, despite her messages to the supposed soap star saying otherwise. And here's what else we know about Roxanne Doucette. According to her social media page, she notes she's been married since 1979. She worked as a daycare provider, and in her bio lists her other nickname as Foxy Roxy. She wrote, "Living one day at a time, trying to be as positive as I can. I'm married to Paul. I have 2 children and 3 beautiful grandchildren." Her Facebook page shows what looks to be a loving couple who enjoys spending time together and with their family. So what would prompt a grandmother of 3 to poison her husband of more than 4 decades? Dr. Jumbelic explains there's a whole psychology behind the sinister act.
I think that someone doesn't want to get caught. They want to be stealthy. They want to distance themselves from the murder. And they think this is the best way to go about it. Who knows why they pick the particular substance they do? Maybe it's ease. Maybe they heard about it. Maybe they read about it. Or they have it at hand. Whatever it is, and then they think that they can get away with it because they can separate themselves from the act. They do it, and then subsequently the person dies, and now they've achieved their goal. they don't want that intimate act of murder. You know, they do want that distance, but they still want to achieve their end. So in this case, we don't even know what potentially she used, if anything. So that makes it a little bit harder to talk about.
While Roxanne's husband Paul did survive the alleged poisoning, and with it still being unclear what she used to taint the soup, it's possible Roxanne's husband could still face health hurdles later down the road. Court documents reveal Roxanne is still prohibited from contacting her husband or daughter. She also told local reporters she's no longer talking to the catfisher. She's slated to be back in court on February 8th. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.